Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for joining me today to watch this webinar on demystifying autism, key insights for a better understanding. My name's Alicia Coleman, and I'm an accredited mental health social worker providing therapy at Mindful Recovery Services on the lovely Central Coast. Today, I'm going to spend time providing listeners with an opportunity to better understand the autistic experience based on insights and understanding I've developed both as a professional in the field and as a late diagnosed autistic on my own personal journey of self discovery. This is a complex and an evolving field, and one I'm excited to both be involved in and watch develop. And my hope is that this webinar can offer a bit more clarity around this way of being. Okay, so what will be covered today? Firstly, I will begin by providing an outline around what autism is, considering what the key differences in this neurotype are. I will also identify and clarify areas of misunderstanding that often surround the autistic experience. I will then explore this concept of neuroaffirming practice. What does this mean and why it's so important? From here, I'm going to look into the lived experience of being autistic, identifying strengths and struggles that can be present. And next, I'll be providing a bit of an exploration and discussion around how others, such as family, friends, teachers, colleagues, etc., can support autistic individuals. And finally, I'm also going to provide some strategies that autistic individuals themselves might find helpful to trial, building on these strengths and personal preferences with the aim of living a more fulfilling and rich life. So who's this webinar for? Really, it's for anyone who's after a deeper understanding or some clarification um, around autism. And this may be family, it might be friends, carers, newly diagnosed autistic individuals, people exploring their own journey, teachers, or other professionals wishing to broaden that knowledge. Okay, so what is autism? Autism is difficult to define, I believe, and this contributes to the widespread misunderstanding surrounding autism and this experience. I've defined it here as a natural neurotype an individual is born with, which shapes the way we experience, interact, perceive, and communicate with the world. Autistic individuals, therefore, have different ways of experiencing the world compared to the dominant neurotypical experience. And what I'm going to go through here is a number of these key differences, um, and give a bit of an explanation of the impact and those differences. Okay, so let's start with social and communication differences. So, communication differences. Here, there might be a preference for using direct or precise language. There may be the preference or the need for more processing time, a preference for written communication over verbal communication, differences in tone, facial expression, eye contact, where the social differences might be a preference for clear expectations, a more deep, meaningful connection with others rather than those casual conversations or small talk. We may also misinterpret or skip social neurotypical rules, and we may need more downtime after socializing. That's quite a common experience there. Okay, moving on to sensory differences. Um, This can be a sensitivity to sounds, lights, textures, smells, touch. It might be a deep comfort from certain sensory experiences, or it might be a sensory overwhelm in intense environments. There's also intense interests and passions that can occur with the autistic experience. And this is really a deep focus on specific topics of interest, often referred to as a special interests, or preferably spins is often the term used here. There's also a preference for repetitive behaviors, routines, and predictability. And due to this, change or new experiences can be difficult in that adjustment phase, particularly. Okay, some other areas where differences can be experienced is with perception, executive functioning, thinking and processing style, emotion regulation, and processing differences, to name a few. Really important to make note of here is that every autistic individual experiences autism in a different way, just as every human being is different. There is no one way of being autistic, is I guess what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so moving on, we're going to consider what is this concept of the spectrum and what does this mean? It's something we might hear thrown around a bit. Um, so the concept of the autism spectrum helps explain the different ways autism can be present and experienced. As mentioned just before, no two experiences will be the same. A tool that we use to show this difference is the autism spectrum wheel. So I've included an image here to reflect this. This is a visual tool that shows how an autistic person's strengths and challenges can vary across many areas. So instead of placing someone on a mild to severe scale when we refer to the autistic experience, it instead serves to highlight their unique and multidimensional profile. So we can kind of see from this illustration here, this is one autistic person's multidimensional profile. Again, differs. Everyone's going to have a different profile. An important point to note here is that when we're under increased stress, we're navigating significant change, we might be experiencing increased perceived or real pressure. We're experiencing poor sleep. So during those times and many other sort of stressful times, our position on this autistic wheel can shift. And that can be confusing too to understand, and it is important to be aware of that. Okay, so moving along, I just want to briefly touch on what I refer to as the autistic struggle. And others may also refer to it as the autistic struggle as well. So, what is this? This is the kind of situation where autistic people often face challenges not because of their neurotype itself, but because society generally is built around neurotypical expectations and ways of preferences. And there's a mismatch here. And this mismatch can create a number of challenges for autistic individuals. And I'm just going to go through a few that I've identified here. And of course, there'd be many more we could add. So sensory overload can occur when we visit everyday environments which are designed for the neurotypical sensory tolerance, such as I feel like shopping centres can be a good example of this, particularly at Christmas time. And this can lead to overwhelm, shutdowns, burnout due to the intensity of noise, the presence of bright lights, uh, lots of people, crowds, smells. Again, so different for each individual, but typically those environments are not constructed with autistic individuals in mind. So that can be a bit of a struggle spot there. Social expectations and unwritten rules. So autistic communication styles generally differ. Well, they do differ, and that can lead to misunderstandings occurring quite frequently, and that feeling of being unfairly judged, which is, a very common experience for the autistic individual. Also, many workplaces, schools, the public systems, hospitals, etc. They're built again around this neurotypical expectations. There's particular ways things are expected to be done, processes that are needed to be followed. They can be quite rigid. They may have multitasking demands, noisy environments. These all create barriers for autistics in these environments, um, especially when there's not the flexibility provided or understanding here from people in those environments, um, and when accommodations are not provided or encouraged for the autistic individuals. Um, Okay, and the last one I've put there is difficulty being taken in seriously in their experience. So often the autistic experience can be dismissed or not given the validation that would be ideally beneficial to autistic individuals. And this is often can be based on that outdated medical model assumption of what it is to be autistic. And this is something I'll discuss further on the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is neuroaffirming practice, what it is and why it is so important. So as mentioned, this will be kind of looking at the medical model versus the neuroaffirming model of autism and the impacts the two can have on what it is on the autistic individual rather. Okay, so let's start by looking at this medical model of autism. So this dates back to the 1940s and 50s era, later appearing in the DSM-3 in the 1980s, the DSM being the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that is used by psychiatrists and the medical mental health professionals. And this was really with a focus on pathology and dysfunction. So seeing autism as a disorder that should be diagnosed, treated, and fixed. It's focusing on deficits or impairments. It's measuring functioning against the neurotypical brain, and it's trying to correct those differences. As we can imagine, this is not a very helpful or accepting way of viewing autism. So, on that note, how does the medical model impact autistic people? Okay, so it can lead to interventions that ignore individual strengths, creates pressure to mask natural behaviors, which often results in autistic burnout, anxiety, depression, loss of identity. It can contribute to stigma, low self esteem, feeling marginalized or less than. and it prioritizes fitting in socially over authentically expressing yourself. Okay, so what's this neuroaffirming model of autism? The neuroaffirming model is a real shift at the moment, and you'll hear this term a lot in this field, which is fantastic that we're moving that way. And this is a model which recognizes that autism is a natural variation in human neurotypes. Okay, it's we can actually date it. We can see it back in history. It's a natural variation that occurs. It's not a disordered brain that needs to be fixed. So this model focuses on supporting needs, not changing identity. It's recognizing challenges come from that environmental mismatch that I discussed previously, not the neurotype itself. It's encouraging inclusive and supportive environments and advocating for accommodations where needed. Um, and I've highlighted here, most importantly, it's using neuroaffirming language. Um, Neuroaffirming language being that real move away from the medical model and the terminology that's used there. We're not talking about deficits. We're not talking about autism as a disorder. We're using language which focuses more on how we can support the individual, looking at strengths. It's not using that high-low functioning language that has been used in the past. Um, it's more inclusive, looking at using terms such as differences rather than disorder, challenges rather than deficits. I hope that provides some clarification there. Um, the other point to sort of make note of here, and I try to ensure that I do this when I speak for autistic people, is to use that identity first language. So referring to us as an autistic individual, autistic person, rather than a person with autism. Um, it can be hard to explain why that's important, and everyone's different as to whether they find that helpful. For me, it's reclaiming autism, or being autistic rather, as part of who I am, rather than I'm a person with this disorder. I hope I've kind of clarified that. It is a confusing concept, but I'd encourage you to I guess speak with people in your world who are autistic, and maybe seek their feedback there. Okay, so why is neuroaffirming practice, why does it matter? So it's validating the autistic experience rather than dismissing it. It's strengths based, helping autistic people thrive and reach their potential on their own terms. It's reducing stress and mental health risks associated with masking, or trying to fit in, which I'll discuss more as we go along. It's encouraging self-expression and acceptance in a world where judgment is common, so incredibly common for autistic individuals. It provides validation and much, much more. And I've just highlighted here, really key, for autistic persons, it is vital that we are given the opportunity to be supported from a neuroaffirming stance. So really looking for practitioners, health professionals, who are working from this model rather than the sort of outdated medical model that I've touched on before. Okay, so let's clarify a few things, looking at some common questions and misunderstandings. Okay, so why are there so many autistic people now? Uh, yep, this is one we hear quite a lot. People throw around this comment quite a lot. So there are not more autistic people now than in the past. We now have better understanding and broader diagnostic criteria and less stigma, which means more people are finally getting recognised. Research shows rates rise mainly because we're identifying people who've been missed previously, often adults, often women, or those assigned female at birth. Um, okay, isn't everyone a little on the spectrum? No, no, that's not the case. Autism isn't a neurotype. It's not a personality trait. Everyone has their quirks, and I suppose can identify with autistic traits. But autism involves consistent differences in sensory processing, communication, and cognitive style that are present from early development, that are present from birth. Saying everyone is a little bit autistic, aren't we all on the spectrum? It can be quite dismissive for people, for us with real support needs, and quite invalidating, to be honest. What is autistic burnout? Autistic burnout is a state of deep physical, emotional, and cognitive exhaustion caused by cognitive stress, sensory overload, and prolonged masking. It is real. And research shows it's linked to reduced functioning, increased anxiety, depression, and a strong need for recovery time and reduced demands when this occurs. Okay. Can you be autistic and be an ADHDer? Yes. Yes, the two frequently co-occur. We're kind of seeing and understanding that more now than ever. Most recent data that I've come across, and I haven't triple checked this, but the most recent data I came across was indicating that possibly around 80% of autistic people are now meeting, could now meet ADHD criteria. Okay. So next point of clarification. I thought only boys were autistic. Autism exists across all genders. Early research was, however, based almost entirely on boys, specifically white, uh, reasonably well-to-do white boys, um, and due to this, I've just lost my train of thought. Due to this, a lot of people were missed, and a lot of females particularly were missed, or those assigned female at birth were missed. What we now know is that autism can present differently across genders because of both neurology and social expectations. Females, or those assigned female at birth, often internalize emotions such as anger, frustration, and anxiety. And due to this, their those emotions may show up in a different way. So through withdrawal, shutdowns, perfectionism, a more quiet distress often. Whereas males are more likely to externalize these emotions, and they show that overwhelm often in a more visible way through frustration, restlessness, meltdowns. Quite often, anger is often how it plays out as well. What is masking? Masking is when autistic people hide or suppress natural behaviors such as stimming, avoiding eye contact, scripting speech. A few more examples have been noted here, and we often do this to appear neurotypical, to be accepted within the norm, and it helps us feel safe or socially accepted. Uh, but as you can imagine, it's exhausting, and it can feel like we're, I guess, performing a lot of the time. And when we come home, or when the individual finishes school, for example, we can feel exhausted, as I mentioned. Anxiety can occur, burnout can occur, depression can occur. Um, Complicated by the fact that often we don't know that we are masking. So young women may be masking and may not be aware that this is occurring. So good just to be aware that this is this is a real experience for autistic individuals, particularly females. Okay. So how can others support the autistic community? I've just highlighted a few key suggestions here. Of course, very important using open, inclusive, non-judgmental dialogue and ways of interacting with autistic individuals. We get enough judgment and uh, not feeling accepted just routinely within our day-to-day lives. So providing situations where that is not occurring is so incredibly helpful. Okay, and how do we do this? So we work with the individual to understand their experience, needs, and sensory world. We provide validating support, acknowledging feelings, intentions, and differences without judgment, reducing pressure, often by lowering demands, avoiding forcing tolerance, and allowing pacing at a pace that suits the individual. Also encouraging and advocating for accommodations or necessary adjustments rather that support the individual. Um, this might be adjusting sensory load, routines, and transitions to help autistic persons feel settled and more regulated. Using gentle acceptance, noticing discomfort without pushing avoidance or overwhelming exposure. So finding that kind of tricky balance spot there. Starting with values, focusing on what matters to the person, not fixing traits. Using neuro-affirming terminology, as noted previously, and assisting autistic persons to identify and work with their many strengths. And that brings us to the next slide, um, on identifying and celebrating the exceptional strengths that the autistic community possess. So whilst I cannot speak for all autistic people, I've just sort of identified a few key strengths that I'm aware of, um, and that have also been identified in the research. Again, this is just a really brief snapshot, and I encourage you to work with autistic people to help identify those strengths and lean into them. So the strengths I've identified here: loyalty, reliability, and consistency. Absolutely, honesty. Yep. Logical, rational thinking, the ability to deeply focus can be a strength for some autistic individuals. Attention to detail and strong follow through, passion and expertise in interest areas, unique perspectives and innovative solutions, creativity, often increased pattern recognition abilities, and of course, many, many more. Okay, so just moving on to neuro-affirming strategies for autistic well-being. So I've identified some strategies that I use when I'm working with autistic clients and individuals myself when I'm practicing. These are also strategies that I myself use uh, myself to I guess manage some of the struggles that I deal with being an autistic individual. So let's start with understand and communicate your profile. So exploring those sensory needs, communication style, strengths, stress points, really understanding your experience. It does take time. It does evolve. It changes, and then sharing this experience with others, but sharing it when we feel safe to do so. So with those safe people, um, is of course important. Identifying and seeking accommodations. This is around adjusting environments, expectations, and routines to reduce overwhelm and increase access to what you need to access, whether that's school, study, work, etc. Uh, Absolutely key. Practice self compassion. Replace self criticism with kindness, especially around those differences, the fatigue that we experience, and sensory limits. Um, we can be quite self critical because of the criticism that we do receive from the world. That's just the reality. And with this neuroaffirming change that we're seeing, this will, I imagine, shift. But there is a lot of criticism out there, which we then internalize into self criticism. So really, really actively working on that self compassion. More we work on it, the more second nature it becomes. Connect with other neurodivergent people. Um, yeah, this is a great one. So of course, we are all social beings, and connection with others is such an important and needed and necessary part of our experience as humans. Often, when we are neurodivergent, finding people who have similar uh, interests, traits, who are also autistic or even ADHD or other neurodivergent people can be really beneficial. It's excuse me, reducing that isolation, increasing belonging, often also offering that lived experience and wisdom that comes with that. Excuse me. Identify and lean into strengths, as I mentioned. Use your natural interests, abilities, and patterns of thinking as foundations for well-being and confidence. So leaning into those strengths is I believe really quite vital. I notice particularly when I'm first working with autistic individuals, there can be embarrassment or shame around these specific interests, um, and working with and understanding what that's about can be helpful, and then really leaning into those strengths, those interests, because ultimately it makes us feel good, and it's part of who we are. Uh, Finally, yes, learning to safely unmask. So this might be using self-regulation strategies such as stimming. I'm a big believer in stimming. Stimming is uh, a self-regulation strategy that we all use, but particularly helpful within the autistic neurodivergent community. That could be using fidgets. Always got some fidgets on hand. That kind of repetitive movement can be really helpful in regulating ourselves, and definitely one area of unmasking that I personally lean into. Other unmasking, I think I went into before, learning to safely, authentically be yourself. Of course, in some places we might safe be our authentic self, and we can be criticized or judged for that. So it's finding those safe ways and places where we can do that. Um, Takes time. Um Definitely takes time, and finding other neurodivergent people to explore that with can be helpful. Working with a neuroaffirming therapist is is um, is really key as well. So if you're someone who is seeking therapy, to really look for that neuroaffirming therapist who's going to be working with your strengths, not working from that outdated medical model. Fortunately, that's pretty standard practice now, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. What was I saying? So, neuroaffirming DBT skills for autistic well-being. Definitely wanted to make mention of how vital DBT skills can be for autistic well-being. So, working with a therapist to learn and apply DBT or dialectical behavioral therapy skills can improve emotional well-being and positive outcomes for the autistic community. Underpinning DBT is the notion of working towards finding the middle ground between change and acceptance. This is a constant struggle for all of us. However, I feel this strongly aligns with the autistic experience of working on finding a balance between personal needs and external expectations. DBT therapy focuses on four key areas, and these have been outlined below, along with the identified benefits. So let's go through them and how they can be of benefit. Distress tolerance. So working on skills here can assist to manage overload, sudden change, meltdowns, shutdowns. Really learning when we're in that high distress that can come from sensory overload or environments where we're very uncomfortable, learning how to manage that distress in a safe, healthy way. Emotion regulation is working to better understand the purpose of our emotions. Often, with autistic individuals, that can be a bit of a struggle spot. Uh, and then identifying and working with our triggers and learning skills to work with intense emotions. With emotion regulation being a sort of an experience that neurodivergent people can experience on a higher level than neurotypicals, generally speaking. Mindfulness. So mindfulness is learning skills to increase self-awareness, techniques to create calm and minimize judgment and self-criticism. Um, of course, vital. So learning some specific skills there and how to apply them is beneficial without doubt. Interpersonal effectiveness. So this area of DBT is beneficial as it can assist autistic individuals around learning helpful communication skills, where to use when social rules feel unclear or exhausting. Even we've got some go-to skills to fall back on. Again, really leaning into and learning improved self-compassion and how to better validate ourselves when we're not getting that validation elsewhere. Okay, and okay, so that comes to the end of our of my webinar today. Um, Thank you for taking the time to listen to this webinar, and I really hope that you've gained an increased understanding on the autistic experience. I really acknowledge that this only touches on the area. There is so much more uh, I could really go into, and so much more to say on all these areas and all these topics I've discussed. And I really encourage you to do your own exploration and understanding here. There is an absolute wealth of information and knowledge out there, and it's really heading in that neuroaffirming direction, which is, as I said, it's so wonderful to see. Um, well, I've also included a few key resources here uh, that might start you further on this journey. Reframing rather autism, a great website with some free another free webinar there, and resources. And this book that I've recently come across called the Neurodivergent Skills Workbook for Autism and ADHD. So not getting any kickbacks there. It's purely just a book that I've found and I'm really enjoying at the moment. Free on Spotify if you've got premium, you can listen to it, or available on Amazon. Of course, if you're someone who is interested in working with myself or one of the other neuroaffirming practitioners here at Mindful Recovery Services, we would absolutely love to work with you. This is an area of absolute passion for me, and I really find it a privilege to work with those going on this journey and finding ways to understand themselves and to learn some skills that can really um, assist them in finding in being able to experience and live a more rich and fulfilling life. As I said, um, it, knowledge is power, and the more we understand our experience, the better our lives can be. And I really find working with someone who knows what the experience likes can be. Personally, I found that really beneficial. So do reach out. Do reach out. I've got the information there. Email, Mindful Recovery, and our phone number. Um, but yeah, once again, thank you for taking the time to join and and listen to what I've been saying today. Thank you. Okay, bye now.